ACT Radio is taped and produced at the KTEP studios at the University of Texas at El Paso. The views and opinions expressed on ACT Radio are solely those of its participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KTEP, its staff, or management.
Welcome to Animal Concerns of Texas. I'm Greg Lawson.
And I'm Liz Walsh. Here on ACT Radio, we talk about how we humans interact with other animal species.
How we use them for food, clothing, and entertainment, and how there are humane alternatives to those practices.
We discuss why a vegan diet is not only the best diet for us humans, it's the best diet for the animals and, of course, for our planet.
So if you're concerned about the environment, if you're concerned about the way animals are treated, or you're concerned about your health, stay with us for Animal Concerns of Texas. Joining us on today's show, Tom Linney becomes a co-host of ACT Radio. Tom's with the Animal Legal Defense Fund. We're glad to have you with us, Tom.
Glad to be here.
Also, we feature a conversation with David Agranoff, horror fiction writer and author of the new book, Vegan Revolution with Zombies. That's in our special Halloween edition of ACT Radio. But first, some news.
According to records released today by Wild Earth Guardians, Wildlife Services, the ironically named branch of the United States Department of Agriculture, killed more than 4 million wild animals and pets in 2009 while spending over $120 million. Last month, Wild Earth Guardians filed a Freedom of Information lawsuit seeking to track how this money is spent, but the agency continually sidesteps public scrutiny. In 2009, Wildlife Services reported that it killed 4.1 million animals and destroyed 18,000 more. That total includes a staggering 27,000 beavers, nearly 1 million blackbirds, 82,000 coyotes, 1,700 bobcats, 480 wolves, 571 river otters, and 443 black bears. In response to Wild Earth Guardians' lawsuit, Wildlife Services and its parent agency, the USDA's Animal Health Inspection Service, stated that it could not answer the group's simple request for line item spending data. The agency stated that it tracks expenses using two different databases, one that's operational and the other that is financial, but the accounting systems are not interactive. Thus, Wildlife Services claims it doesn't know how much it spends on its controversial operations such as shooting coyotes and wolves from helicopters. The agency further stated that Wildlife Services doesn't have a managerial need for financial data at this finite level. Steve Sugarman, Wild Earth Guardian's attorney, responded by stating that federal agencies must be fiscally accountable to the public and that it's time for Wildlife Services to stop playing shell games and show the public what they're doing with our money in the light of day. Wildlife Services is biologically harmful and unselective for species killed. Many conservation biologists have noted that Wildlife Services carnivore eradications amount to a sledgehammer approach to wildlife management because of the breadth of extermination. Wildlife Services uses indiscriminate and deadly means to slay wildlife. Many are killed by mistake, even rare species such as kit foxes, swift foxes, and river otters. For example, of the 571 river otters that Wildlife Services killed in 2009, 84 were killed accidentally. Our tax dollars should not be used to support these type of activities that are so indiscriminately violent towards our wildlife.
You're right, Liz. Wildlife Services has a budget of $120 million a year, and they killed 500 domestic dogs and over 1,300 domestic cats last year. Contact your congressional representatives and tell them that something needs to be done about Wildlife Services. U.S. District Judge Emmett Sullivan has ordered the Department of the Interior to review whether polar bears are endangered under federal law. Judge Sullivan wants clarification on the Bush-era decision that listed polar bears as a threatened rather than an endangered species under the Endangered Species Act. Former Interior Secretary Dirk Kempthorne said in May of 2008 that the bears were on their way to becoming extinct because of the rapid disappearance of the Arctic sea ice upon which they depend. But he stopped short of declaring them endangered, a move which would have given them more protections and would have made oil and gas exploration more difficult. The current Secretary of the Interior Department, Ken Salazar, upheld the Bush-era policy on polar bears. District Judge Sullivan is giving the Obama administration 30 days to explain how it arrived at its decision. That's good news for the bears who are threatened by climate change.
From the Wall Street Journal, sex offender registries have become commonplace throughout the nation. Now animal rights advocates are tweaking the idea to come up with animal abuse registries. New York's Suffolk County Legislature on Wednesday, October 13th, signed off on a measure that would publicly name anyone convicted of animal abuse by having them report to a registry for 5 years after their conviction. Most serial killers began as animal abusers. Suffolk County Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Chief Roy Gross told the North Shore Sun, most serial killers began as animal abusers. It's a known fact. People who hurt animals hurt people too. The Sun story says that convicted abusers would pay a $50 annual fee for upkeep of the registry, and those who fail to register would be charged $1,000 or face jail time. The legislature is also considering another bill that would require pet stores and animal shelters to check the registry before allowing anyone to adopt or buy an animal. In February 2010, the Animal Legal Defense Fund launched a national campaign to promote abuser registry legislation and has worked with Suffolk County legislator John Cooper's office in support of the bill. The fund says registry bills have been introduced in 6 states. One is California, home of recent measures that allow caged chickens to have enough space to spread their wings and prevent cows' tails from being clipped to allow easier milking. The New York Times quotes one supporter of the proposed law, Gillian Deegan, an assistant Commonwealth's attorney in Betancourt County, Virginia, who says such a registry would be valuable in tracking people who run puppy mills and animal fighting rings, as well as hoarders who sometimes collect hundreds of animals, often resulting in neglect. A similar animal abuse registry measure in Tennessee in 2008 failed to pass. To bring this registry to fruition in Texas, please visit exposeanimalabusers.org.
Stay with us. Coming up next on Act Radio, we feature a conversation with David Agranoff, horror fiction writer and author of the new book, The Vegan Revolution with Zombies. That's next on Act Radio. Joining us now on Animal Concerns of Texas, David Agranoff. Thanks for being with us on this special Halloween edition of Act Radio, David.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, hi, David. Why don't we start out by having you tell our listeners how you got involved in a vegan lifestyle?
Well, I've been vegan since 1993, and I first became involved with veganism because, well, I came from a punk rock background, and specifically the straight-edge subculture of punk rock, which is an entirely drug-free subculture of punk, and a lot of the bands at the time were vegetarian and starting to get involved with veganism. And as I got more involved with that scene, I read Diet for New America at the time, and Diet for New America by John Robbins. Specifically, there was one page where they were talking about dairy products that, you know, I had a few friends that were already vegan, and I basically knew that it was the way to be. And there was a combination of one chapter in Diet for New America and a lyric from the band Earth Crisis, which is a vegan, straight-edge hardcore band. And they have a lyric that says, don't let your outrage at injustice end where your selfishness begins. And that really made me think, because I had known for a long time that there was lots of environmental and health and cruelty concerns involved in the production of dairy and eggs. And that statement, instead of putting what you want ahead of your ethics, you should be putting your ethics first. It was very, very crucial in making that decision. And then about 6 months after I decided to be vegan, I did an internship at Farm Sanctuary, and that kind of sealed the deal.
Yeah, I would guess that would happen, yeah. You're also involved with an organization in Portland called Try Vegan PDX. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Try Vegan. What we basically try to do with Try Vegan PDX is to do one-on-one vegan mentoring, because we feel like the best outreach that you can do for veganism is the ones you do with your friends, the ones where you're one-on-one, taking people shopping, cooking with them, going out to eat with them, those kinds of things. And so what we wanted to do was try to find a way to take that circle beyond our friends. So we started this organization so we could do that kind of mentoring on a one-on-one basis. And every year we do a week called Try Vegan Week where we advertise that, you know, we'll be doing free classes for a week and mentoring and all that kind of thing. And then, you know, usually we mentor between 20 and 30 people a year during Try Vegan Week. And we have a really high success rate of people staying vegan because, you know, they have all the tools. So that's been, you know, a real positive thing. But what we decided to do after the first year was make the mentoring available year-round. And so locally here in Portland, we don't do it nationally, but you can sign up on our website at any time to get a one-on-one mentor if you're serious about making a change in your diet. And we just make sure that people are serious about it because if somebody's going to volunteer their time to mentor you, we want to know that you're going to take it seriously during that time.
It sounds like it's spreading one by one, sort of like a zombie epidemic.
Yeah, sort of like that. There's a saying from an old straight edge hardcore band that I quoted at the beginning of my book. 1 + 1 is how it's won, and that's really my philosophy and my belief is that, you know, that is the most effective outreach and activism that we do. It's not the quickest, and
not when there's so many billion people.
Yes, but what it does is, you know, if we look at, you know, Earth Crisis had this big influence on me, and I dedicated Vegan Revolution with Zombies to the singer of Earth Crisis, Carl. And by him taking the time to promote the message of veganism in his music, he took the message to me, and anyone that I can convince to be vegan, and all of my activism in the end is a product of his effort and his outreach. And so I feel like anyone who reaches the message of veganism through my work, it comes down to his work. And so you never know who I might be doing the outreach to who might do it better than me in the future.
Yeah, we like to think that we're having that effect.
You know, it's not the quickest way to make social change, and believe me, I have thoughts and theories on other ways to do it, but, you know, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I just really feel it's the most effective way, and it's the way I feel most comfortable with at this point in my life.
You mentioned your book. Can you tell us a little bit more about your book and how you came up with the idea to write it?
Yeah,
and tell our listeners
the Vegan Revolution with Zombies is not a book that I would have written on my own probably. But what basically happened is my publisher came to me and said, you know, we want to work with you, we want to do some books, but we really think there needs to be a vegan-themed zombie novel. And at first, you know, zombies are not my favorite subgenre of horror. Now, I am an old-school zombie fan, and if you read my book, you can tell that I'm a serious zombie fan because, you know, there's references to Fulci, who's a 70s Italian zombie director, and obscure zombie films like Burial Ground and Nightmare City, and so I've been a zombie fan for a long time, but with this latest zombie trend, with the Pride and Prejudice and zombies and all that, it's driving me up the wall. And a couple months before this project got started, I even said to one of my close friends here, if I ever write a zombie novel, punch me. But when Eraserhead came to me and said, we want you to write a vegan book, everything else didn't matter. If they're telling me they want me to write a book about veganism, it's hard for me to say no. And so what I really needed to do was find an idea that I could have fun with. And where the idea came from was we have one of the best bookstores in the entire world here in Portland, Powell's
yes, you
Book.
do. I've been there many times.
Yes, and Powell's has a horror section that I can literally spend entire days in. And there was a Saturday afternoon when I was trying to formulate this project, and I was standing in the horror aisle, and within a half an hour, 4 different people who you could tell had never read a horror book in their life walked into that aisle and said, have you read Pride and Prejudice with Zombies? It's so hilarious. And that just really annoyed me. So I basically made the decision at that point that the only way I could write this novel is if I made fun of that whole new mashup subgenre. I could not do this without making fun of that. So at the time, I was having a really hard time coming up with an idea to combine veganism with zombies, but once that came to me, once I decided I wanted to do that, the idea just came flowing. And basically, the novel is about a woman named Danny Jonah, who's a editor at a with zombie publishing house. And all they publish are with zombie novels, like Of Mice and Men with Zombies, The Zombie War and Peace, that kind of thing. And at the same time that she's like suffering through this horrible job where, you know, they do team building exercises where they watch zombie movies, is that the only good thing in her life is that at the same time as she's just moved to Portland, she gets exposed to veganism, which she doesn't know at the time is basically saving her life, because in the novel, a new product has been introduced that's supposed to create stress-free meat. And the idea is this chemically altered, genetically engineered meat, dairy, and egg products are supposed to deaden the pain centers and the stress centers inside animals' brains and keep them from experiencing stress. And this is what, in turn, turns the meat, dairy, and egg eaters into zombies in the novel. So the only people that are safe are the vegans.
Oh, all right.
And, you know, I've always considered that zombies sort of a metaphor for meat eaters, you know, mindless eating machines.
Well, I don't want to paint everyone with too broad a brush, because I think a lot of people haven't really thought about the issues. I was 16 years old before I ever even considered the fact that an animal was in any way, shape, or form involved in the production of meat. You know, like, people know, but do they really know? You know, I'm hoping that this book will be thought-provoking, but at the same time, like, the first and foremost thing that I wanted to do with this novel was make it entertaining. And, you know, I think it's a really funny book. If it's thought-provoking, too, that's great, but the main thing is that I want people to be entertained.
Well, I think you had a great line and a parallel, and the line that I'm thinking of is, the point is that they have taken a classic of literature, a statement about friendship in the face of great social injustice, and turned it into a book about zombies.
Yeah, and the part you're referencing is when they're talking about the main character's editing Of Mice and Men with Zombies.
Right.
And it's important to point out that the character that she's talking to does point out that, you know, George A. Romero, who, you know, I point out in the book is the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost of the zombie genre, George Romero, you know, was very aware of social commentary. Social commentary has been a part of the zombie genre from the very beginning. If you really feel that Night of the Living Dead obviously kind of kicked off this genre, you know, that is an entirely socio-political statement in a film. And his entire first trilogy each represents a different decade. And so, you know, I don't think it's that far of a stretch to do a zombie novel that has a vegan message. It's, you know, it obviously, you know, makes sense to vegans. You know, we'll see how it makes sense to non-vegans.
I like to think that your audience will be more than vegan zombie lovers, you know, but...
Well, yeah, and so far we've seen some pretty good reaction from people who are not vegan at all, and definitely some of the jokes will go over their head. There's a great deal of commentary about the inner workings of the animal rights movement as it is today.
Yeah.
Between the debates between freegans and vegans and abolitionists and welfarists, all that stuff. And a lot of that stuff, I think, will go over the heads of the people who are not a part of the movement, but I don't think it'll hurt their reading experience. You know, I've seen reviews from non-animal rights people who have said that they found that interesting because they didn't realize there was that many sub-versions of vegans. They think we all think alike, apparently. And so I think it's been good that they can see that, you know, we are not myopic, you know, like we all have different views. I mean, the debate between abolitionists and welfarists in the animal rights movement has been particularly intense in the last couple of years. And one of the things I'm proud of is that I think both sides of that debate, the welfarists and the abolitionists, you know, have good reason to be annoyed by my book, because I present some questions for both sides of that debate. I definitely fall more on the side of the abolitionists myself personally. There's definitely some criticism there too. And obviously the entire book is a statement on the idea of welfarist ideas that we can make humane meat. I mean, that was very important to me from the get-go, that the humane meat be the thing that started the zombie apocalypse.
A very interesting premise to think that making meat more humane leads to the zombie apocalypse.
Well, humane, sort of, because in the end, it really wouldn't change anything. All it would do is mask. It would be like you take an aspirin, you still have a headache, you just don't realize it. And I think what I was trying to say with this book is that you can't make meat more humane. You just can't do that. It is what it is. And I think that I just really wanted to make a statement about that, that all these ways we try to get around the reality of what's really involved.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because, we've had that discussion on our show in the past before about this test tube meat and all of these other new ways to make meat more humane. And I think you're right, though. In the end, it's just not possible to have a more humane meat. It's muscle tissue from a living being. Exactly.
And there's a lot of different ways that I try to address those issues in this book, but at the same time, I have to make clear that the book is meant to be entertaining, and if I can get a message out there too, that's cool, but the main thing is that it's a book with a fire truck with a jousting pole on the front and vegan power written on the front where they're spearing zombies. I mean, this book is meant to be entertaining. It's there are some serious moments, and it is an interesting thing for me to do in my career because, and I believe Greg's read my short story collection too, I write some funny, but one of the reasons why I said, I don't think I would have written this without being kind of pushed to do it is that I don't generally write funny. I generally write more dark and depressing adventure tales, but this is a stretch for me. I mean, I had a lot of fun doing it, and I think probably it will make people more happy than the stuff that I generally write, but at the same time, I hope that people will, if they see that this is a good story, if they enjoy it as a story, that they will come back and check out my other work because, it's coming from the same brain. And, the main thing that I set out to do every time I sit down to write a short story or a novel is to write something that nobody else could, to tell a story that nobody else could tell. And I really feel like this one is definitely one that is extremely unique.
I think you've done a great job at bringing this issue to the vegan issue to a more mainstream level. I know in a recent GQ article even it's entitled "Zombies Are the New," and then it has scratched out vampires, werewolves, hobbits, and then we're back to zombies now. Have you found a similar buzz in terms of the popularity to your book?
Yeah, I've noticed. We made a film-style trailer for the book. I directed a couple scenes from the book, and the trailer has just gotten, thousands of views, and it's really gotten out there.
Oh,
and I definitely feel like it was a really smart idea to combine. My publishers were just thinking, hey, vegan books sell and zombie books sell. And, that's great. That's their job to think about those things for me because they're thinking, long term, for me, what's a way to get your name out there? And it's really helped because I know this, I'll follow an author to any genre, to any style of story if they're a good writer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so what, I'm hoping that people will see is that maybe this, people will come because it's a zombie novel, but I'm hoping that they'll stick around and check out some of my other work. And, we've, Eraserhead and I have 4 other books in the pipeline that we're working on, and some other really interesting stuff, and including a very environmentally themed science fiction novel that I already have written called Last Warriors of the Earth that kind of is a more serious take on some of the same issues, but more so strictly environmental. And that novel is pretty much about the world running out of water. basically how the world deals when there's not enough drinkable water for our growing population, which is a problem that I think we're really heading towards.
Yeah, it's reality. We're going to face that. Can you give us a website where people can find out more, or perhaps where they can buy Vegan Revolution with Zombies?
Yeah, the best place to buy Vegan Revolution with Zombies, it's definitely Amazon. Amazon is definitely the best place to pick it up. It's the easiest. But you can request it at your local bookstore. It's carried by major distributors. If you don't have the money right now, request it at your library. We really appreciate that. We want to see the book get out there to libraries as well, so that means a lot to us, too. This is a DIY publisher, and, I'm as DIY as they come, so we like any help that we can get. I also, I have a fan page on Facebook, and I also have a blog where I do book reviews of pretty much every book I read and update people with news, and that's just davidagranoff.blogspot.com, and I update that every couple days.
And I understand the proceeds from your book for the first year of sales are going to...
Not the first year. The first 4 months, the sales are going to Try Vegan PDX. Yes, so that's
great.
Through the end of December. So this is definitely the time to buy it, because it supports our vegan mentoring work here in Portland.
Great. We've been talking with David Agranoff, horror fiction writer and author of the book, The Vegan Revolution with Zombies. Thanks for being with us, David.
Thank you.
Join us for the Vegetarian Society of El Paso Compassionate Thanksgiving Dinner, Saturday, November 13th at Lancers Club East. For reservations, please visit vsep.org, vsep.org.
And just remember during this Halloween season that black cats are particularly vulnerable, and in many cases they're not up for adoption during the season to help protect them. And so you might want to keep your black cat in this October 31st.
We're glad that Tom Linney of the Animal Legal Defense Fund joined us on ACT Radio and plans on joining us for future episodes. Thanks for being with us, Tom.
Thank you very much for having me.
We've just finished 8 years of Animal Concerns of Texas, and if you'd like to listen to some of our past episodes, you can do so by going to ktep.org and click the button that says Listen to Past Shows. Until next time, I'm Greg Lawson.
And I'm Tom Linney.
And I'm Liz Walsh for the Animals, the Earth, and a Healthier Humanity. Thanks for listening to Animal Concerns of Texas.
I got a little this morning, how do you reckon it? Oh, hurry, hurry, my man, love it dead. I got a little this morning, how do you reckon it? Oh, hurry, hurry, the man you love it dead. I grabbed my suitcase, I took on up the road. I got there to a lane on a cooling ball. I grabbed my suitcase, I took on up the road. Oh, when I